The order has been given. Somewhere over the Indian Ocean, B-2 stealth bombers are climbing to altitude. In the eastern Mediterranean, submarine launch tubes are opening. In air bases across the Middle East, F-15E Strike Eagles and F/A-18 Super Hornets are running up their engines. Hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles are spinning up their navigation systems, loading their target coordinates, preparing to fly. The United States of America is about to strike Iran. This moment has been anticipated, war-gamed, debated, feared, and prepared for by military planners on both sides for over 20 years. Every American president since George W. Bush has had the Iran strike option on the table. Every one of them has looked at it, and every one of them has so far chosen something other than pulling the trigger. Today, in this scenario, the trigger has been pulled. Maybe it was Iran's nuclear program reaching a point of no return. Maybe it was a devastating Iranian missile attack on American forces or on Israel. Maybe it was an escalation in the Persian Gulf that crossed a line the president had publicly committed to defending. The specific trigger matters less than what comes next. What comes next is what we are going to walk through today. Hour by hour, in the first 24 hours after American bombs begin falling on Iran. What gets hit? What Iran does in response, what the region looks like by the time the sun rises on the second day, and what the United States discovers about the gap between what it planned and what actually happens. Because in war, the enemy always gets a vote, and Iran has been casting its vote, preparing its response for decades. Before the bombs fall, there is an hour of silence that isn't silence at all. In the final minutes before the first strikes, American electronic warfare systems go active. EA-18G Growler aircraft, the most capable electronic warfare aircraft in the world, begin jamming Iranian air defense radar frequencies. The goal is not to destroy Iranian radar. The goal is to create uncertainty, to make Iranian radar operators unsure of what they are seeing, to slow their reaction time, to introduce confusion into the Iranian air defense network in the critical seconds before the first explosions. Simultaneously, American cyber operations, months in planning, now activated, attempt to penetrate Iranian command and control systems. The targets are the networks that connect Iranian radar stations to missile batteries, that relay orders from the Supreme Leader and the IRGC command to field units, that coordinate the response Iran has planned and rehearsed. If those networks can be disrupted even partially, Iranian response time degrades. The chaos in those first minutes buys American aircraft and missiles precious seconds. In the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea, American submarines are already in position. They have been in position for days, repositioned under the cover of normal operations, their movements obscured by the acoustic complexity of the shallow Gulf and the busy shipping traffic. Each submarine carries dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles. At H-hour -5 minutes, they begin their launch sequence. The Tomahawk is not a fast weapon. It flies at approximately 880 kilometers per hour, subsonic, terrain following, radar evading. A Tomahawk fired from a submarine in the Persian Gulf takes roughly 45 minutes to reach targets in western Iran. The launch sequence begins early enough that these missiles arrive simultaneously with the first aircraft strikes. At H-hour, the B-2 stealth bombers that have been flying from Diego Garcia for the past 12 hours reach their release points. Each B-2 carries 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, the 30,000-pound bunker busters designed specifically for deeply buried facilities. The release coordinates have been computed and loaded. The bombers are invisible to Iranian radar. The B-2's radar cross-section is approximately the size of a large bird. The bombs fall. Hour 1. The first strikes hit. The target list for the opening strike package is prioritized by military planners according to a logic that has been debated and refined for years. Priority 1. Iranian air defense systems. The S-300 batteries that Russia sold to Iran, the domestically produced Bavar 373 systems, The shorter-range Tor M1 and Panzer systems that protect key installations, these must be suppressed or destroyed to allow subsequent strike waves to operate. And Iran, with functioning air defenses, can shoot down American aircraft. And Iran, with degraded air defenses, cannot. The opening Tomahawk salvos hit air defense radar stations, command nodes, and missile battery positions that have been identified and cataloged by American intelligence over years of surveillance. Some batteries are destroyed outright. Others are damaged. Others, the ones that were mobile and had been moved from their surveilled positions, survive intact. This is the first complication. Iran has been preparing for this strike for years. Its air defense units run frequent exercises in which they move their systems, shut down their radars to avoid detection, and practice operating in a degraded communications environment. Not everything American intelligence mapped is still where the maps show it. Priority 2, Iranian ballistic missile infrastructure, the launch sites, the missile storage facilities, the production plants, the command nodes that would coordinate a ballistic missile response. This is where the GBU-57 bunker busters come in, targeting the underground facilities that conventional bombs cannot reach. The results here are deeply mixed for reasons we have discussed in previous videos. The shallowest facilities are destroyed or severely damaged. The deepest facilities, buried in mountains beneath hundreds of feet of solid rock, absorb the impact of the bunker busters without catastrophic damage. The missiles inside those facilities remain intact. Priority 3, Iranian naval assets. The fast attack craft and missile boats of the IRGC Navy that could threaten American ships in the Persian Gulf. The submarines. The shore-based anti-ship missile batteries along the Iranian coastline. These are targeted simultaneously across the length of the Gulf, a complex coordination problem made harder by the dispersal of Iranian naval forces into small ports, coastal caves, and fishing harbors along the 1,500-kilometer Iranian Gulf coastline. Priority 4, Command and Control. The IRGC headquarters, the Air Force Command Center, the facilities associated with Iranian nuclear decision-making. These are high-value, politically sensitive targets. Striking them risks killing senior Iranian military and political figures, which raises the political stakes of the operation significantly. By the end of Hour 1, hundreds of American weapons have impacted Iranian territory. Fires burn at radar stations, air defense sites, missile facilities, naval bases. Black smoke rises over multiple Iranian cities. The Iranian government goes into emergency protocols. State television broadcasts emergency programming. Supreme Leader Khamenei is moved to a secure location, and Iran begins its response. Hour 2 to 4, Iran strikes back. Iran's response does not wait for American strikes to end. It was pre-planned, pre-authorized, pre-positioned. The moment American bombs began falling, possibly even before, if Iranian intelligence detected the pre-strike preparations, orders went out to Iranian military units across the region. The first Iranian response comes from the ballistic missile batteries that survived the opening strikes. Iran launches salvos of ballistic missiles at American military bases in the region. Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American air base in the Middle East, home to the forward headquarters of U.S. Central Command and dozens of American aircraft, is targeted. Qatar, a U.S. treaty ally that hosts American forces with its government's permission, is now being struck by Iranian ballistic missiles. The Qatari government, which has maintained working relations with both the United States and Iran, faces an impossible situation. Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, another major American installation, is targeted. Ain al-Assad Air Base in Iraq, which was struck by Iranian missiles in January 2020 in retaliation for the killing of General Soleimani, injuring over 100 American service members, is targeted again with larger and more accurate missiles than the 2020 attack. American Patriot PAC-3 batteries at each base engage inbound missiles. Intercept rates are high, but not perfect. several missiles penetrate the defenses. At al-Udeid, a ballistic missile impact destroys a hangar containing several American aircraft and kills American and Qatari personnel. The runway is damaged but remains operational. At Ain al-Assad, 2 missiles impact inside the base perimeter, causing significant casualties and destroying fuel storage facilities. Simultaneously, Iranian proxy forces across the region activate. In Iraq, Iranian-backed Shia militias that have been attacking American forces intermittently for years shift to sustained operations. Rockets and drones begin striking the American embassy compound in Baghdad, the largest American embassy in the world, and American military positions at Baghdad International Airport and other Iraqi bases. The Iraqi government, caught between its American security relationship and its Iranian political ties, is paralyzed. In Yemen, the Houthis, who have already demonstrated the ability to strike targets across the Arabian Peninsula with drones and ballistic missiles, begin a new wave of attacks. Their target list expands beyond Saudi Arabia to include American naval vessels in the Red Sea and American base infrastructure in the region. In Lebanon, Hezbollah goes to its highest alert. It does not yet launch its full missile arsenal that would represent a decision to enter a full-scale war with Israel simultaneously, which Hezbollah's leadership calculates carefully. But it begins preparing, moving missiles, positioning forces, creating the conditions for escalation if ordered. And in the Persian Gulf, the IRGC Navy activates. Hour 4 to 8. The Persian Gulf ignites. This is the phase that American naval planners have feared most. Fast attack craft that have been hidden in small ports and coastal inlets along the Iranian coast emerge in large numbers. They are not coordinated in the way that a Western naval force would coordinate: centralized command, synchronized timing, radio-controlled movements. They operate in swarms, with local commanders executing pre-planned missions, communicating through burst transmissions and pre-arranged signals that are harder for American electronic warfare to disrupt. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 21 million barrels of oil pass every day, becomes a combat zone. Iranian mining operations begin. Mines laid by small boats in the shipping channels of the strait, conducted at night, difficult to observe and almost impossible to stop in real time. Mine clearing is slow, dangerous work. Even a small number of mines in the strait creates uncertainty that drives insurance rates for tanker traffic to prohibitive levels, effectively shutting down oil transit without Iran having to physically stop every ship. Iranian shore-based anti-ship missiles engage American and Allied naval vessels in the Gulf. The opening American strikes destroyed some of these batteries. Others survived. A Noor cruise missile salvo strikes an American destroyer conducting Gulf patrol, not sinking it, but damaging it severely enough that it must withdraw from the combat zone. Oil prices, which began rising the moment the strikes were announced, spiked to levels not seen since the 1970s oil shock. Within hours of the Strait of Hormuz mining becoming public knowledge, Brent crude passes $200 per barrel. The global economy begins absorbing a shock whose full dimensions are not yet clear. American minesweeping assets in the region are limited. The U.S. Navy has invested relatively little in mine countermeasures over the past 2 decades, a capability gap that has been identified repeatedly in studies and assessments, and repeatedly underfunded in defense budgets focused on other priorities. Clearing the Strait of Hormuz could take weeks. Hour 8 to 16, the diplomatic explosion. While the military situation in the Gulf evolves, a different kind of explosion is occurring in diplomatic capitals around the world. Russia condemns the American strikes in the strongest possible terms, calling them an unprovoked act of aggression against a sovereign nation and an illegal violation of international law. Russia does not take military action. It has no treaty obligation to Iran and no interest in direct confrontation with American forces. But it immediately begins supplying Iran with intelligence on American strike packages gathered by Russian surveillance satellites. China issues a similarly condemnatory statement. Chinese state media runs continuous coverage emphasizing American aggression and Iranian civilian casualties. The strikes on military targets have inevitably caused some civilian deaths, and Iranian state media amplifies every image of civilian destruction. China recalls its ambassador from Washington for consultations. It announces a freeze on U.S.-China military-to-military communications, the very channels that would be needed to prevent accidental escalation if Chinese and American forces come into proximity. America's traditional allies are divided. Britain and Israel express support for the operation. France and Germany express deep concern and call for an immediate return to diplomacy. Turkey, a NATO member with complicated relationships in all directions, calls for restraint while positioning itself as a potential mediator. The Arab states of the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, are in an extraordinarily difficult position. They host American forces. They fear Iranian retaliation. They have their own complicated relationships with Iran, including economic ties and minority Shia populations that could be mobilized by Iranian influence operations. They make carefully worded statements that do not explicitly endorse the American strikes, while not condemning them either. The United Nations Security Council convenes an emergency session. The resolution condemning the American strikes is vetoed by the United States. The resolution condemning Iranian attacks on American forces is vetoed by Russia. The Security Council, as designed, is deadlocked. Hour 16 to 24. What has been achieved and what hasn't? As the first day draws toward its end, American military planners conduct their initial battle damage assessment, the accounting of what the strikes actually accomplished versus what was planned. The results are mixed in ways that were anticipated and mixed in ways that were not. Iranian air defense capacity has been severely degraded. The S-300 and Bavar 373 batteries that were in their surveilled positions have been largely destroyed. But approximately 30% of Iranian air defense assets were mobile and survived the opening strikes by being repositioned. Iran's air defense, while damaged, is not destroyed. American aircraft are still taking fire over Iranian territory. Iranian ballistic missile capacity has been degraded but not eliminated. The surface-level facilities, the known launch sites, the production plants, many of these have been struck. But the underground missile cities, the deep facilities that the GBU-57 cannot reliably reach, remain functional. Iran has already demonstrated this by firing ballistic missiles at American bases in the hours since the strikes began. The missiles it fired came from surviving underground facilities. Iranian naval capacity in the Gulf has been significantly reduced. Many fast attack craft destroyed, multiple shore-based missile batteries neutralized, but not eliminated. The Strait of Hormuz remains mined. Oil transit has effectively stopped. Iranian nuclear facilities present the most complicated picture. The enrichment facility at Natanz, a primary target, has been struck. Significant damage has been done to above-ground infrastructure. The deep underground enrichment halls at Fordow, the ones that may be beyond the reach of conventional weapons, may or may not have been penetrated. The initial assessment is uncertain. A follow-up strike will be required to assess and possibly restrike. Iranian proxies across the region are active and escalating. The situation in Iraq is deteriorating. Iraqi political leaders are under enormous domestic pressure to expel American forces, which would eliminate crucial American basing in the region. The Houthi threat in the Red Sea has intensified. Hezbollah has not yet launched its full arsenal, but all indicators suggest it is preparing to. And Iran's supreme leader has made a public statement that is being analyzed in every intelligence capital in the world. He has not signaled a desire to negotiate. He has vowed that Iran's response will be historic and that those responsible for the attack will not know peace. He has specifically referenced the option of closing the Strait of Hormuz until American forces leave every inch of the region. The first 24 hours have not ended the Iranian threat. they have transformed it. What does this mean strategically? A strike on Iran does not solve the Iran problem. This is the conclusion that every serious analyst who has studied the question has reached, and it is the conclusion that the first 24 hours of a real strike would rapidly confirm. Iran's nuclear program can be set back by months, possibly by a year or two. It cannot be permanently destroyed by conventional military action as long as Iran retains the knowledge, the scientists, and the political will to rebuild. The Osirak precedent, Israel's 1981 strike that destroyed Iraq's nuclear reactor, is frequently cited by proponents of military action. But Iraq in 1981 had one reactor. Iran in 2024 has dispersed enrichment facilities, underground installations, and a scientific infrastructure that a single strike package cannot eliminate. Iran's missile program survives a strike largely intact, specifically because of the underground missile cities that previous videos have described in detail. The missiles that threaten American bases, Israeli cities, and Gulf state infrastructure are in facilities that conventional strikes cannot reliably destroy. Iran's proxy network is activated and emboldened by the strike. Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iraqi militia groups, all of these are now in a heightened operational posture, conducting attacks on American and allied interests across the region. Managing these threats simultaneously while conducting sustained operations against Iran itself is a multi-front challenge of extraordinary complexity. And the global economic consequences, oil prices, insurance markets, supply chain disruptions, begin cascading through the world economy in ways that are difficult to predict and impossible to fully control. A strike on Iran does not end a crisis. It transforms a crisis from a containable, manageable, slow-burning confrontation into an acute, multi-front conflict with unpredictable escalation dynamics and enormous economic consequences. This is not an argument against military action under all circumstances. There are scenarios: a confirmed Iranian nuclear weapon, a devastating Iranian attack on American or Israeli targets, where the costs of not acting outweigh the costs of acting. Military action sometimes is the least bad option, but it is an argument for clarity about what military action achieves and what it does not. The first 24 hours after American bombs fall on Iran do not end the Iranian threat. They begin a new and more dangerous phase of it. 24 hours, hundreds of strikes, fires burning across Iran, across American bases in the region, across the Persian Gulf shipping lanes that carry the world's oil. We walked through every phase: the opening electronic warfare, the strike packages, Iran's immediate response, the Gulf igniting, the diplomatic explosion, and the honest battle damage assessment that shows how much was achieved and how much was not. The hard truth is this: the United States has the military power to severely damage Iran. It does not have the military power to solve the Iran problem from the air. What comes after the first 24 hours, the sustained campaign, the escalation management, the proxy wars, the economic consequences, the political sustainability at home and abroad, is where the real reckoning begins. If you want to understand the full picture, how Iran's underground missile cities survive the strikes, what China does when the U.S. is focused on Iran, or what a long-term sustained campaign against Iran would look like, subscribe now. Naval Power, because the ocean is where the next war begins.